Oh hey, it's Emily, and today I'm going to be breezing through the books that I read in May and June. I read quite a few, and I have done vlogs. I am not quite caught up in posting them, but hopefully I will be able to be before too long, and I'll make sure to link as many of the vlogs as I can down below. But I have been vlogging this whole time, so I'm going to be kind of short and sweet and snappy because there's just quite a bit to get through. But yeah, I'm just going to be reviewing the books that I read over the course of May and June. It was a really good couple of reading months for me. So let's just dive right in, and my notes are down here, so that's where I'm going to be looking for part of it. So the first thing I read in May was actually an audiobook, Daughter of the Pirate King by Trisha Levenseller. And this one's just a fun pirate sea ship YA fantasy. You follow the daughter of the Pirate King, and she is on a mission to intentionally get caught and held by some other people because she's looking for a map. And so she, is intentionally, again, getting held in the brig of a different ship so that she can search around, gain the trust of some people, see if she can find this map. And it just becomes, of course, more complicated than she thinks. It was just so much fun. I just had a good time with this one. It's Trisha Levenseller, and she just writes fun, just slightly angsty, but just entertaining, at least to me, YA fantasy. So if that's something you're in the mood for, would highly recommend. The next one I read was The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake, and this one I really enjoyed. This is a dark academia that follows people who are trying to get into the Alexandria Society, and there are 6 candidates, but only 5 of them will actually be admitted into the society, and so it kind of creates a very interesting dynamic between these characters. A very character-driven book. There's not a ton that happens plot-wise. There are some things, but there's not a ton that happens plot-wise. It's not a very fast-moving, action-packed book. It's really about these characters, and it's about the conversations that they have, and the dynamic between them, but also how the dynamic shifts when they figure some things out about what this process is exactly going to look like in terms of just them going through this period where they're trying to figure out who's going to be in this society. Very interesting. I'm very intrigued to see what happens next. I then read Hotel Magnifique by Emily J. Taylor, and this one had fabulous vibes. Like, the atmosphere and the vibes in this one were immaculate. And you follow a couple of sisters, and they end up getting jobs at this hotel, the Hotel Magnifique, that actually goes to different places every night at midnight. And so it's kind of traveling around a la the night circus kind of thing, where it just appears in different places every day. And if you take the Hotel Dracanian from Nevermore, but like make it dark and twisted, those were the vibes. It was super fun in terms of just the atmosphere, the vibes. It did get kind of gruesome, so it's like YA fantasy, but also has horror elements in there. And basically, just as they start to work at this hotel, our main character just realizes that there's a lot that's just really off, and so she's trying to figure out what's going on to protect her sister. And things just keep getting darker and more twisted, and she's trying to just get her and her sister out. Again, fun vibes. I say fun, again, part of it is horror, but just the atmosphere was great. The next thing I read was The Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson, and I actually need to read the next 2 in this series before the 4th and I think final one comes out in November. This is the second Era Mistborn series, so you are, I think, 1,000 years after, or some hundreds of years, I don't remember how many years after the events of the original trilogy. And this one kind of has outlaw western vibe, but still very much feels like it's in the Mistborn world. And you follow some characters who are basically just trying to solve a mystery, and one of them is nobility but doesn't really want to be, and he's trying to help kind of regain the stature that his house used to have before his uncle ruined that. And you also have someone who's helping them solve the mystery of some people who are getting held hostage, or some things like that are going on, and they're trying to figure out what's going on. It was so much fun. I really enjoyed this one. It's definitely just entertaining. I thought it was really funny, and I really enjoyed our characters here. I just thought they were so fun, and I had a great time being back in this world. And it was definitely like a very different vibe, I think, in some ways, in the first one, in terms of like the humor was still there in the first series, but this one is intentionally just, the humor is kind of, I think, the main point in this one. They're just very snarky and sarcastic characters, which I love. So had a great time. I'm looking forward to continuing that one. Next thing I read was The Cartographers by Ping Shepherd. I was definitely very intrigued by this one. You follow our main character who has an argument with her dad, hasn't seen him for years. He dies at the beginning of the story, and as she's going through his effects, finds some maps that they had an argument about, and he had claimed that these were useless and pointless maps, but he still had them and kept them in his personal effects. And so she's wondering why he would have said that at the time. What's so special about these maps? Why did he keep them? She's logging some information, and she realizes that every one of the same maps that she has, all the other copies are being destroyed, burned, they've disappeared, that kind of thing. And so she's wondering why, and goes on a quest to kind of figure out what's up with this map, and realizes that it's kind of part of, there's of course more to the story, more going on, deals with a group of people that her parents knew back in the day. And so she, talks to and works with some of the other people that her parents knew to figure out what was going on. You do kind of sort of flash back to her parents back in the day, I think in their college years. And so, yeah, she's trying to figure out what's going on. But yeah, I was intrigued by the mystery part of this. I thought it was overall pretty entertaining. I can definitely see why not everyone would like our main character, or find certain things in here kind of just repetitive and annoying or even boring. And if the cartography or if the map mystery part doesn't intrigue you, then I don't think there's going to be much to hold on to here. I didn't like the romantic elements in this one, I will say, but overall I was just intrigued and did actually have a fun time with that one. Next one that I read was Daughter of the Moon Goddess. I absolutely adored this one. This is a very whimsical adventure story. You follow our main character, who's the daughter of the Moon Goddess. Her magic flares and gains the attention of the celestial court, and that's when she realizes that her mother is actually a prisoner on the moon. She can't leave, and no one in the celestial court knows that the Moon Goddess had a daughter, and so her daughter needs to kind of go on this quest to free her mother and see what she can do to help her mother out. And she goes on this whole adventure. Things happen super quickly, so you go from major event to major event. Events kind of come up and are resolved very quickly, but I actually didn't mind that. I thought it was actually super fun for the story. But yeah, very whimsical, fun writing. I love our main character. I actually did like the romantic elements in this as well, and she's such a strong character and just such a badass. I adored her, and just loved the side characters. I thought the side characters as well were really well done. I just adored everything about this one, to be honest. Next book I read was The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axio, and this one kind of had very similar vibes, I think, to Daughter of the Moon Goddess, although very different story. I think I enjoyed it slightly less than Daughter of the Moon Goddess, but still had a really fun time with this one. And in this one you follow a girl who, in this world, every year someone is sacrificed to the sea god, and so the sea god needs to find his one true bride, and that will kind of help help things on land for the people who worship the sea god, because they think he's just not happy, and that's why some things are happening on land that would be able to be controlled if the sea god were happy and found his one true bride. So every year they sacrifice one girl in the community to see if she is the one true bride of the sea god. And our main character's brother's love interest is the woman that's going to be sacrificed this particular year. And so instead our main character decides to go in her stead and goes to see what's going on, find out more about the sea god and what's going on, and see what she can do to protect herself, but also see what she can do to help our community. Super fun. I really enjoyed this one, and following our main character, I really enjoyed our main character. Yeah, I had a really good time with this one. I thought the magic was interesting. There were a few things about it that occasionally were confusing for me, but just overall fun, whimsical vibes again. So I had a good time with that one. So we're now getting into the books that I read for the month of June. The first one I finished in June was A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. This one follows our main character who's going back to his hometown island, or his home island, after 10 years of not being there, and some girls are going missing, and so he's, you know, trying to figure out what's going on there. Very lyrical. It's very an atmospheric book, I think, before anything else. The atmosphere is the thing that sells this book for me. The character work was really great too. It is a community-centered story, just, again, focusing on this community and him coming back and trying to integrate himself into this community again after being gone for so long, under circumstances that weren't really great for him emotionally. So he's trying to figure out what it means to be back home. He's trying to figure out what's happening to these girls. There's some people, you know, the island is kind of divided, and these people have kind of been antagonistic towards each other for a long time, so there are also themes of trying to heal the rift between the two parts of this island. And very slow moving story, very soft magic. So if slow character and atmospheric driven community stories that do have magic, but that's not the focus, if any of that sounds intriguing, I would highly recommend. I had a really good time with this one and just felt so immersed in the world, and yeah, I love this one a lot. The next one I read was Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. I adored this one so much. You follow a couple of main characters, one who is a doctor, one who lives in a very small town outside of the big city that she's from. And again, I will always point out the baby goat because I love the baby goat. And so they kind of meet through circumstances, and she, you know, ultimately kind of comes back to him. They start to form this relationship, but she, you know, she doesn't think that he can be integrated into her life. Her family has very demanding standards for their children and anyone that they bring into the family, and she comes from a family of doctors, and she's the black sheep of the family because she's just an ER doctor. So like that's the vibe of her family. And so she doesn't see how he's going to fit into her life. And, you know, it makes that very clear, but they still kind of form this friendship, this relationship, and fit really well together. And she's starting to question what she actually wants out of her life. You know, the kind of people that she wants to surround herself with and feel supported by. And you know, just starts to question a lot about where she wants to head, and whether she wants to keep going and being a part of her old world, or whether she wants to integrate into his world, basically, or see how they can meet in the middle there. I thought their communication was great. I loved them individually. I loved them learning to communicate with each other. Huge trigger warnings for emotional and some physical abuse, that is very heavily discussed and a huge theme in here, so just note that. But I love this one a lot. The next book I read, speaking of trigger warnings, also look up, there's actually trigger warnings listed at the very beginning of this book, but do be mindful of that. There's a lot of brutality in this book, because this one basically deals with themes of child soldiers, and you follow Sloane, who is has magic. She is, like, it's magic descended from the Orisha gods, specifically the ones that have fire magic, I believe, is how it's described. And so she has these magical abilities, but people with these magical abilities are targeted, and she is forced to be part of the military force that is actually hunting people like her. She needs to try to control her power and control her abilities, and so she's trying to figure out what she can do to survive in this new environment, but also see what she can do to change things. And so there are huge themes of cycles of violence. There are huge themes of how people are manipulated and propaganda, and how people can be controlled in circumstances like that. And there are also themes of her trying to find a safe place. That's a huge discussion in this one. But she's also trying to figure out what she can do to change the system and change the circumstances. But also trying to figure out, like, can she still be a good person despite everything that she's forced to do, and how to navigate that. I was so immersed in the world. I thought the world building was a huge strength here. I really liked our characters, including some of the side characters. And I just thought this book was fascinating, just very interesting. Again, just very lush world building that I was just so engrossed in. But definitely, again, very brutal. So, but would highly recommend. I then read The Stardust Thief, one of my favorites of the year so far. This is by Chelsea Abdullah. And in this one you follow a thief, Luli, who deals in illegal relics that have Gen magic. And she, through circumstances, rescues one of the princes one day, comes to the attention of the Sultan, who basically orders her to go find a specific Gen relic. And so she needs to venture out into the desert, into Gen territory, to find this relic. She has her bodyguard, one of the princes, and one of the princes' kind of inner circle as well, that go along, and it's so great. I love the characters. You follow a few of their perspectives here. I love the characters. I love the dynamic between them. The world building, so fantastic, so rich, so colorful. This is definitely an ode to storytelling. So storytelling and lore is a huge focus of this one, which I absolutely loved. So if any of that sounds of interest, or if you tend to enjoy fantasies based on Middle Eastern mythology or inspired by Middle Eastern mythology, I think these are inspired by some stories from 1001 Nights. If any of that sounds of interest, would highly recommend. And next one I read was The Box in the Woods by Maureen Johnson. This is the fourth book in the Truly Devious world, so it is unconnected. The first three books are a distinct trilogy. So this is unconnected to that trilogy, but you follow some of the same characters who go out. It's like a one-off scenario. They go to investigate something at a summer camp where some deaths happened at this summer camp some years ago, and then, you know, it's kind of a similar vibe to the first one, or a similar storytelling tactic to the first one, where something happens in the past, you follow those events in the past, but you're also switching back and forth to the present, where some things reminiscent of what happened in the past are coming back to the forefront, and Stevie needs to find out what's going on. I would recommend reading the trilogy first, because there's no introduction to the characters or character work build up at the beginning. They assume that you know and love the characters already, and they just kind of jump right into this next story. So just FYI. But I enjoyed it. I think if you enjoy the original story, I think you'll have a good time with this one. It is very condensed because it is just the one book to tell this story. And so it definitely feels like things happen much quicker in terms of like things wrapping. Like I felt like it wrapped up very quickly. But I had a good time with it still. So the next one I finished was The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas, and I really enjoyed this one. Again, the atmosphere and the vibes in this one, perfection. So this is a gothic horror story, and you follow our main character. First of all, this cover is just stunning. You follow our main character who has just married someone who's probably not a good person, but she decided to go for it and get married anyway. She goes back to his estate and just starts to realize that some things are off. She's trying to get some answers to questions about his first wife. You know, things start happening. She like is starting to call in the priest to, you know, figure out if there are some spiritual ghostly things happening, and just kind of gets caught up in the story of this hacienda and how that relates to what's happening to her today, or in the present day of the story. It's a historical gothic, but it was super interesting. I enjoyed following our main character. I enjoyed this setting, again, the atmosphere and just the vibe of this place, and exploring it was super fun. And you definitely think it's gonna go one direction, and I thought the direction it went was interesting. I could see some people taking issue with it, but I thought it was super intriguing. Highly recommend. Next one I read was The Book of Night by Holly Black, and in this one you follow Charlie, who used to deal in like shadow magic, and there you know, there's a whole thing with shadow magic and people manipulating their shadows in this, which I thought was super interesting. I do think, again, the vibes of this one were pretty cool. It's definitely a contemporary story, and she one day, as she's coming back from work, finds some horrific things. She's trying to figure out what's going on. She kind of gets drawn back into the world that she was in and was trying to leave. And you follow some things in her past about how she kind of got into the world that she was in, and why she left, and how she's getting brought back in, and investigating what's going on. She needs to confront some things from her past. This one did kind of end up being a bit forgettable for me, so not one of my favorite ones that I've read so far this year, but definitely interesting vibes. And I'm not huge on contemporary fantasies for the most part, so that might be why. But I am definitely interested to continue and just see what happens in the next one, but I don't think this will end up being a favorite series for me personally. And the final book I want to talk about is City of Glass by Cassandra Clare. I can't say too much because this is the third book in the Mortal Instruments series, so I will just say that the huge YA angst continues. But this one was still fun. I'm still really enjoying this series overall. Just the romantic and the angsty parts can be a bit much sometimes, but it's still just somehow fun and entertaining at the same time. And I think Amy was mentioning in one of her videos that this actually was it originally going to be a trilogy, and it was originally going to wrap up here, and then she was able to continue on with the series, which you can tell because there's kind of a story arc that wraps up here, and so we'll see where it goes from here. But there were definitely some eye-rolling moments with the eggs where I was just like, I can't. But it's still just so addicting and fun and just easy to read and get into. So I ended up having a really good time with this one. And that is everything that I read in May and June. So definitely a really great couple of reading months. July has been really great as well, so I'll talk about that in a future video. But yeah, let me know if you've read any of these books or have any thoughts on them. How did your reading go in May and June? Hopefully a good wrap up to the first half of the year. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know, again, if you've read any of these or what your thoughts were. I will leave information linked down below, including my Twitter and Instagram, and more information about how you can support the Black Lives Matter movement, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.